All right. This is not ESPN's 30 for 30. However, it is my 98 for 98. The 98 seasons in the history of the New York Football Giants. And I'm going to try to get it done in 98 days. Probably not going to happen. I just want to get it done before the beginning of regular season, which starts September 10th. So we're forging ahead. We're just a little bit more than halfway through the 50s now. Very special season for the New York Giants. Very special season indeed. It's almost been 20 years since their last championship. Well, 1956 be very, very good to the New York Giants. It'd be championship quattro. So their first one was in 1927. That's when they won the championship. There was no championship game back in the from 1920 to 1932. Basically, it was whoever had the best winning percentage at the end of the season. And the Giants were 11-1-1. They had, in 1927, they had the best winning percentage at the end of the season. Therefore, 1927, Giants won a championship. 1934, Giants, they won the sneakers game, a very famous game. Not so much a bad weather. It was just frozen field, cold, frozen field. Giants won that one 30-13. Then they won 4 years later, 1938, to beat the Packers once again at the Polo Grounds, 23-17. Then this year, they were not at the Polo Grounds anymore. They started in Yankee Stadium. So 1925 to 1955, first 31 seasons the Giants were in existence, they played at the Polo Grounds. Now they started in Yankee Stadium. They would be at Yankee Stadium from 1956 up until the first 2 weeks, 1973. That's when they were renovating, doing some major reconstruction, whatever, to Yankee Stadium. Obviously the Yankee, because they did that like after the football, the baseball season was over with. So once the baseball season was over with, 1973, they kicked everybody out, including the Giants, and then the Giants in 1973. The first two games of 1973, the Giants played at Yankee Stadium. The first game of the season, they beat the Houston Oilers, not the Tennessee Titans, not the Tennessee Oilers, the Houston Oilers, 34-14. And the following week at home, last second field goal, as pretty much as the clock expired, Pete Gogolak kicked a field goal to tie the game at 23-23. And so the Giants played the first two games of the 1973 season at Yankee Stadium. The remainder of their games, they played at the Yale Bowl. So anyway, back in 73, there was 14 games, 7 home, 7 away. So the Giants played 5 games. The first 2 home games in 1973 were at Yankee Stadium. The final 5 were at the Yale Bowl. And they didn't fare very well at the Yale Bowl. Between 73 and 74, they played 12 games at the Yale Bowl. They won 1. They were 1-11 at home. What we got, buddy? Teddy! 56 was good, but 66, there's 8 teams in the East. Yeah. Oh, yeah. 8 teams in the East, and the Giants were number 8. 66, even the Atlanta Falcons, the expansion Atlanta Falcons, wanted better than the Giants. Matter of fact, the expansion Atlanta Falcons, first season ever in existence, they won 3 times the amount of games the Giants did in 1966. So, matter of fact, 1966, the New York Giants gave the Atlanta Falcons their first ever victory. So if you ever get a Trivial Pursuit question, who was the first team the Atlanta Falcons ever won in the NFL? It's against the Giants. I think it was November 20th, I think it was, at Yankee Stadium, too. The Giants were home, and they lost to expansion team, 27-16. Absolutely freaking pathetic. But the 56, there was, so the Giants, there was the first season in Yankee Stadium, and it wound up being very, very good. The Cleveland Browns, they came into the NFL in 1950. They came from the All-American Football Conference. The All-American Football Conference was from 1946 and 1949. So the Cleveland Browns, when they came into the NFL in 1950, they went into the Giants division, and from 1950 to 1955, the Cleveland Browns went to every championship game. So the first 6 seasons they were in existence, they went to the championship game. Well, Otto Graham, the Hall of Fame quarterback for the Cleveland Browns, he retired after 55. He played 10 seasons. All 10 seasons, he took the Cleveland Browns to a championship game. Not even Tom Brady could say that. So he, after 55, he retired, which certainly, I guess, helped the Giants' cause to some extent. The Browns actually took a step back in 56. They actually had a losing season. They'd never had a losing season under Paul Brown and the Cleveland Browns. Paul Brown was the coach. And but in 1956, the Browns took a step backwards, and they actually had a losing season. So the Giants won a division. This started a real special time for the Giants. They went to 6 championship games in 8 seasons. Unfortunately, I mean, as the Giants did with many of their championships back then, they lost them. They didn't lose the 56 one. This was a nice, sweet, real sweet season. But the Giants would go to 5 more championship games from 1950 after 56 until 1963. They were going 5 more and they would lose them all. Anyway, but 1956, very, very good season for the Giants. The Giants added a few more pieces to the puzzle, and they really started completing their team. They made a couple trades. They traded for Dick Modzelewski, a defensive tackle. They traded for Andy Robustelli, a Hall of Fame end. They drafted Hall of Fame middle linebacker Sam Huff in the 3rd round. They drafted Jim Kitkavage. He wound up being the other defensive end. And going forward, the Giants now had their front wall. I mean, I'm not sure. I don't think Kitkavage played the whole. Let's see. I'm not even sure if he was a starter the whole time in 1956. But I mean, pretty much going forward, the Giants had their a lot of their defense was was in place. As I said, because they were a phenomenal team going forward. They played in the 1958 championship game. They played in the 1959 championship game. They played in the 61, the 62, the 63 championship game. So Jim Kitkavage, they drafted in 1956. He played in all 12 games. He started in 3. But I mean, basically, the Giants had their front wall, and they had Sam Huff, their middle linebacker, who Tom Landry made the middle linebacker. They kind of, up until 56, the Giants had like a 5-man wall kind of. They had like 2 ends, they had 2 tackles, they had like a middle guard or nose guard or whatever. So that kind of seemed like it was like a 5-man front, and they had 2 linebackers. Well, with Sam Huff, the one problem that they had with Sam Huff when they drafted him was they didn't know where to play him. They were trying him on on the defense, the defensive line. Sam Huff, he was too light to be on a defensive front. wasn't heavy enough. They didn't want to put him on the offensive line. I think they say because he was too slow. It's like when he was trying to pull, they made him a guard or something like that. He was just kind of slow. So here you go. You draft a guy. I believe it was in the 3rd round, and he goes on to be a Hall of Fame middle linebacker, and you don't know, interesting story. They didn't know where to put him. They had no position for him. So he got all frustrated. So he decided to pack his bags and go and leave. So he gets to the airport to fly back home. I believe it was in West Virginia. And who meets him at the airport? Vince Lombardi. And Vince Lombardi says something like, I believe in you, or something like that. He convinced him to talk him into, going back and playing. And we're very glad Vince Lombardi did that, because Sam Huff wound up being a heck of a linebacker, heck of a middle linebacker for the Giants. Well, anyway, Tom Landry was the defensive coordinator for the Giants. And so he specifically, made the 4-3, where basically The Giants had Andy Robustelli and Jim Cabbage, their two ends, and they had Rosie Greer and Dick Modulewski with the two tackles. Well, and then they had, obviously in the middle of them, the middle linebacker was Sam Huff. Well, basically the front four, a lot of their job was trying to make the tackle and sack the quarterback and all that, but also to consume blocks as well too, and keep Sam Huff free, where Sam Huff can roam from sideline to sideline and make tackles, he did. And wound up being, obviously a 4-3, the 4-3 defense. A lot of, maybe they don't seem to use much of that anymore today. I mean, the way it is, there is no not very often you see three linebackers on the field anymore. It's just the game has evolved. I'm just saying back there in 1956 that, was wound up happening. So the Giants added four additional pieces to the puzzle in 1956. They traded for Dick Modulewski, they traded for Andy Robustelli, they drafted Jim Cabbage, and they drafted Sam Huff. So their defense was really, really good to go. And that's why there were a lot of championship games. Their offense, they had their offensive line. They had Schnelker, they had McAfee, they had Kyle Roper, their receivers. Charlie Connerly was their aging veteran quarterback. They had a good offensive line. They drafted Mel Triplett in 1956. He was their third ground gainer behind Alex Webster and Frank Gifford. So the Giants, had a lot of good talent, really a lot of good talent. So they were good to go. After 63, they started trading away a lot of players. A lot of guys started getting old and retired. A lot of guys retired after 64. So then the Giants started going downhill. But from 1956 to 1963 was a very special time for the New York Giants. So let's go here. Let's check out the 1956 season, shall we? It was the 32nd season for the Giants. It was the 37th season in history of the NFL. The NFL started in 1920. Giants started in 1925. So we got the 1956 NFL season was the 37th regular season of the National Football League, with previous television partner Dumont Television Network ending operations prior to the 1956 season. CBS began carrying regular season games across its network nationwide. The season ended with the New York Giants defeated the Chicago Bears in the NFL championship 47-7. Everything, went right for the Giants. Everything. We'll go over the championship game in a bit here, but everything for the Giants went right in that game. The draft. The 1956 NFL draft was held on November 28, 1955, on January 17th and 18th, and obviously 19th. So the 56 draft was held at toward the end of the 1955 year. It was held at Philadelphia's Warwick Hotel, the Bellevue Stratford Hotel, and Los Angeles Ambassador Hotel with the first pick. So I guess it was held, looked like 3 different places. Weird. With the first pick, the Pittsburgh Steelers selected quarterback and safety Gary Glick from the Colorado State University. Interesting. Major rule changes. It is now illegal to grab an opponent's face mask other than the ball carrier. Changed to all players, and which changed to all players in 1962. So back then, if you before 56, you could grab a player's face mask and pull him down, and it was okay. Using radio receivers to communicate with players on the field is prohibited. The ball for night games was changed from white with black stripes to brown with white stripes. Conference races. The Lions and the Cardinals had both finished 1955 poorly, 3-9 and 4-7-1, but both got off to fast starts in 1956. Both ended up finishing second in the conference races. Chicago Cardinals got off to their best start ever, going 4-0 until the Redskins beat them 17-14 on October 28th. At the midway point, they and the Giants had 5-1 records. In the Western Conference, the Lions roared to a 6-0 start. In Week 7, the Giants pulled ahead with a 23-10 win over the Cardinals. In Washington, the Lions finally lost. Trapped on its own 1-yard line, Yale Larry took a safety in order to get a free kick. That and Sam Baker's field goal gave the Redskins an 18-10 lead to put the game out of reach. And the Lions lost 18-17. The Bears, who had dropped their opener at Baltimore 28-21, beat Green Bay 38-14 for their sixth straight game, matching Detroit's 6-1 record. Interesting, because what it said there, the Lions punter, Ojulari, stepped out of the end zone, took a safety in order to get a free kick. And they wound up losing the game 18-17. Had he kicked the ball, instead of stepping out and getting a safety, had he punted out of his own end zone, the Lions might have won that one 17-16. If they had won that one 17-16, guess what? They would have won the division. And they would have been in the championship game and not the Bears. Maybe it worked out best for the Giants, but let's see. In Week 9, the Lions dropped their Thanksgiving Day game against Tobin Road guarded Green Bay to their last quarter touchdown and a 24-20 win. On Sunday, the Cards' 38-27 win over Pittsburgh put them a half game out. The Bears avoided a loss while the Giants watched a win elude them as Harlan Hill caught a last-ditch 56-yard touchdown pass from Ed Brown in tying the Giants 17-17. Yeah, so it's odd, because the Bears played the Giants in what was that week 9. The Bears played the Giants at Yankee Stadium in Week 9, and they tied them 17-17. But when they played in the championship game at Yankee Stadium, that score was totally different. Both the Bears and the Giants continued to lead their conferences, but only by half a game. The Cards lost their next two games and any chance of the Eastern title, which the Giants clinched in part because of a 28-14 win over Washington on December 2nd. The Western race came down to the Bears and the Lions. In Week 10, which was December 2nd, the Lions hosted the Bears and won 42-10 to take the lead. When both teams won the following week, the trip to the championship game came down to December 16th, the last game of the season, which would have the 9-2 Lions visiting the 8-2-1 Bears, who hadn't forgotten the earlier drubbing. The game at Wrigley Field was marked by numerous fights, including a fourth quarter melee involving players, fans, and the police. Wow. And a vicious hit well behind the play by the Bears' Ed Meadows that knocked Detroit quarterback Bobby Lane out of the game with a concussion. So the Bears exacted their revenge with a 38-21 victory. After the game, Lions coach Buddy Parker appealed to the commissioner to punish what the Lions felt was the dirty play of George Halas's Bears, but no ruling was forthcoming. Wow. So I think stuff like that happened back then, and you can get away with it. Not anymore. So the final game of the season was between the Lions and the Bears. If the Lions tied or if they won, they would have won the division. But they lost 38-21. So the Bears wound up winning the division. The Giants wound up 8-3-1. They were ahead of the Cardinals, who were 7-5. The Bears were 9-2-1 in the Western Conference. The Giants were in the Eastern Conference, but the Bears in the Western Conference were 9-2-1. The Detroit Lions were 9-3-0. Let's see the awards. The NFL Most Valuable Player went to Frank Gifford of the New York Giants. The UPI NFL Most Valuable Player went to Frank Gifford of the Giants. The Sporting News NFL Player of the Year went to Frank Gifford, the New York Giants. All right. As its stadium changes, the New York Giants moved from the Polo Grounds to Yankee Stadium. So then we got the draft, the 1956 NFL Draft. I'll just go over some of the players the Giants took. 1956 NFL League Draft had its first 3 rounds held on November 28, 1955 at the Bellevue Stratford Hotel in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And its final 27 rounds were on January 17th and 18th, 1956 at the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles, California. So that's why it was held at 2 different places. The previous NFL drafts in the 50s were held in January. The first 3 rounds were moved up this year to late November to better compete with the teams from Canada. Interesting. This was the 10th year that the first overall selection was a bonus pick determined by a lottery, with the previous 9 winners being ineligible for the draw. Only the Chicago Cardinals, Green Bay Packers, and the Pittsburgh Steelers had an equal chance of winning. The draft lottery was won by Pittsburgh, who selected defensive back Gary Click. Whew. Wow. Okay. There were, 5 Hall of Famers drafted in this draft. Of course, one of them was Sam Huff of the New York Giants. The Packers had 3 Hall of Famers selected in this, and Lenny Moore, running back for the Baltimore Colts, got selected. He was picked in the first round. But the Giants, they traded away their pick to the Los Angeles Rams when they got Andy Robustelli. So they traded away their first round selection. They had their second round pick. They took Henry Moore, a back from Arkansas. But then in round 3, they took Sam Huff, the linebacker from West Virginia. So round 3, the Giants did very, very good. Round 4, the Giants did very, very good. They took Jim Catkavage, the defensive end from Dayton. Those 2 guys would be very special for the Giants for many years. Jim Catkavage, actually, I think he played until 1968 with the Giants. And actually, even Sam Huff, I believe, played till 1968 or 69, I believe it was. So both of them have long football careers. Very good players. Round 5, the Giants took Don Chandler, a back from Florida. Don Chandler kicked off for the Giants. He was a back. Let me see. Did he have any? What did he was? He had a long career. Matter of fact, he what did he do? He had one. He was in on the first 2 Super Bowls. With the Green Bay Packers. So he was in a lot of championship games. Let's see here. Rushing and receiving, Don Chandler. He only ran one time. He only caught 1 pass, though. Basically, he kicked off for the Giants. But Don Chandler, who the Giants drafted, I said, in the, round 5, he kicked off for the Giants. But after Pat Summerall retired after 1961, Don Chandler he kicked for the Giants. He was their kicker, their field goal kicker in 1962 and 1963. Let me see. I'm trying to see. Was he their punter? Kicking punter. He was their punter. Very good. He punted. He got 41.9. So he kicked off. Don Chandler kicked off, and he was their Giants punter. So he kept it. He punted 41.9 yard average. Not too bad. And let's see. I'll just go over the first 10 rounds here. The Giants, round 6, the Giants took Fred Cason, a back from Florida. Round 7, the Giants took Ron Nery, a tackle from Kansas State. Round 8, the Giants took Don Hollander, an end from Army. Round 9, the Giants took Ken Braden, a center from East Texas State. And round 10, Johnny Herman, a back from UCLA. But I said there was a grand total of 30 rounds all told. So, I mean, it wound up being a nice draft for the Giants. They got some extra pieces to the puzzle for their team. So it wound up being a really, really, obviously, overall, obviously fantastic because, the Giants won a championship and all and everything. But it wound up being a great year for the Giants. Let's see. So the Giants, as always, they always started usually basically they're sharing the stadium with the Yankees. Now, before they were sharing it with the New York Baseball Giants. So what happened was they're sharing the baseball stadium or the stadium with another baseball team. So basically, the Giants always started on the road. Anywhere from the first 2 to the first 4 games were on the road every year since 1925. Well, this was no different. The Giants started the first 3 games on the road, basically because they wanted to make sure the baseball season was over with. Because the Giants, they shared it with the Yankees. The Yankees were in the World Series in 1956 against the Brooklyn Dodgers. So they wanted to make sure the baseball season was over with and the World Series was over before the Giants went into the stadium and basically started playing games and chewing up the field and everything. So the Giants' first 3 games were on the road. The first game of the season, they played the San Francisco 49ers. They won 38-21. Second week on Sunday, October 6th. It just goes to show you how weird it is. Their second game of the season was Sunday, October 7th. They almost started the season in October. It was September 30th. But the second game of the season, they played against the Cardinals in Chicago. They lost 35-27. The third game of the season, they played on the road in Cleveland. They beat the Browns 21-9. And as I said, Otto Graham was not the quarterback of the Browns. That really helped the Giants. So the Giants finally came home after 3 games on the road. They were 2-1. They beat the Steelers in week 4 on October 21st, Sunday, October 21st, at Yankee Stadium. They beat the Pittsburgh Steelers 38-10. Following week, the Philadelphia Eagles came on Sunday, October 28th at the Yankee Stadium. Giants beat the Eagles 20-3. Then the Giants went back on the road on Sunday, November 4th. In week 6, they played the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they won that 17-14. Now the Giants are 5-1. The Chicago Cardinals came to Yankee Stadium, and the Giants got their revenge on the Cardinals, who beat them earlier in the season. It's on Sunday, November 11th. The Chicago Cardinals played the Giants at Yankee Stadium. The Giants won 23-10. Giants are 6-1 now. Following week, they were not so lucky. They went on the road to play the Redskins. On Sunday, November 18th, they played the Redskins on the road, and they lost 33-7. Let's see. The following week was the last minute kind of touchdown reception. What was it there against the Bears? Let me read this here. Who we got here? Harlan Hill, 56-yard pass from Ed Brown, 56-yard pass. And a matter of fact, the Giants were winning 17. Actually, the Giants were winning 17-0 in that game. The Bears, George Blanda kicked the field goal, and so heading into the third quarter. So this was the ninth game of the season. So the Giants were 6-2, and the Bears were 7-1. So the Bears were very, very good. They came into the Yankee Stadium. The Giants were winning 17-3 going into the final quarter. Harlan Hill caught a 79-yard touchdown pass to close the gap to 17-10. And then apparently, with under a minute to go, Harlan Hill caught a 56-yard touchdown pass from Ed Brown, and they tied the score with George Blanda's extra point. They tied the score at 17-17. So the Giants wound up tying the Chicago Bears. So they tied them during the regular season at Yankee Stadium 17-17. But when they played them about a month or so later in the championship game, it was a totally different story. So after the week 9, when the Giants tied the Bears at Yankee Stadium 17-17, the Giants' record was 6-2-1. Then the Washington Redskins came, and the Giants got some revenge on the Redskins. They beat them 28-14. Now the Giants are 7-2-1. Then the following week, the Cleveland Browns came. But pretty much the Giants had wrapped up the division by then, because the Eagles were the second closest team. The Eagles were the only other team in the whole division that had a winning record. But the Eagles, I'm sorry, my bad. I'm sorry. The Chicago Cardinals were the only other team in the Eastern Conference, right, as they call it, that had a winning record. But the Cardinals were 7-5. So the Giants basically pretty much with 2 games to go had it wrapped up. Well, they lost the in week 11, second to last game of the season at home on Sunday, December 9th. They lost to the Cleveland Browns 24-7. Then the final game of the season, the Giants went on the road and played in Philadelphia against the Eagles on Saturday, December 15th. And they won 21-7. So they finished the season 8-3-1. So they really, really did good. Really did good for themselves. And then, of course, then we have the championship game, which I'll go over that. Let's see, where we at here? Okay, here we go. I'm just reading this here. So transactions for the Giants. On July 27, 1956, Andy Robustelli was traded from the Los Angeles Rams to the Giants in exchange for New York's first-round selection in next NFL's draft. Okay. The Rams used that pick, the 11th overall pick, to select Del Schaffner of Baylor, which interestingly enough, the Giants would wind up getting Del Schaffner later on, a few years later. Del Schaffner would become a Giant. And it says here, regular season through the 1955 season, the Giants played their home games at the Polo Grounds. Their first game at Yankee Stadium was on October 21st against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the attendance was 48,108. And the Giants would not disappoint. They would win 38-10. I said, now we got the championship game. I mean, it was pretty much, the Giants got the ball, and they had like a 3-play drive. Right off the bat, Mel Triplett ran in from 17 yards out. Ben Agajanian's kick put him up 7-0. The Bears got the ball back. They fumbled. Andy Robustelli got the ball, recovered the ball. The Giants, Ben Agajanian kicked a 17-yard field goal to put the Giants up 10-0. The Bears got the ball back, and they what did they do? They threw an interception. Jim Patton intercepted the ball. Benny Agajanian, I think Patton intercepted the ball around like the 35-yard line or so. Giants really couldn't move. But then Ben Agajanian came in, kicked a 33-yard field goal to put the Giants up 13-0. Then the Giants had a nice long drive. It was like a 5-play drive and went like 70 or 80 yards. And Alex Webster finished it off with a 3-yard run. So basically, like a couple minutes into the second quarter, the Giants were up 20-0. The Bears scored there on a 9-yard Rick Caceres run. I don't know, 6, 7, 8 minutes and halfway through the second quarter. Emlyn Tennell, Hall of Famer for the Giants, he was back to receive a punt, and the ball, I think the ball bounced. He tried to get the ball, but the ball fell out of his hands when he was trying to bring the ball in. The Bears wound up recovering it, and a couple plays later, Rick Caceres ran it in from 9 yards out to put the Giants up 20-7 to give the Bears their only points of the game. The onslaught was just on. I mean, then Alex Webster ran the ball in from 1 yard out. Then Henry Moore recovered a block punt in the end zone for the Giants, put them up 34-7. So it was 34-7 at halftime. The Giants would score one touchdown in the third quarter. They scored one touchdown in the fourth quarter. I mean, it was just onslaught. So the game was played on an icy field. So basically, a lot of the players wore sneakers with the temperatures hovering around 20 degrees. To adjust to slick conditions, the Giants opted to wear sneakers instead of traditional football cleats. Some of the Bears wore sneakers as well, too. The advantage the white sneakers provided in footing was cited as a major factor in New York's romp. 22 years earlier on an icy Polo Grounds field, the Giants had employed the same tactic and beat the Bears to win the 1934 NFL championship game in the famous sneakers game. The Giants opened with a 53-yard kick return and scored on a touchdown 3 plays later. So they got the opening kickoff returned 53 yards, and 3 plays later they scored a touchdown. On the Bears' first play from scrimmage, Bears quarterback Ed Brown fumbled the handoff to Rick Caceres, which was recovered by the Giants. I think it was Andy Robustelli. 38-year-old Ben Agajanian kicked a 17-yard field goal after the offense went 3-and-out. On the Bears' next drive, the Bears quarterback Brown was intercepted by Jimmy Patton, and once again, Ben Agajanian kicked another field goal, giving the Giants a 13-10 lead. The Bears then turned the ball on I forgot all about this. The Bears went for it. It was like 4th and like half a yard to go, or 4th and 1 in their own half of the field, down 13-0. They didn't make it. I forgot about that. So then, I think the quarters turned. Right, that was like one of the last plays of the first quarter. So then the Giants got the ball back, so basically they started their next drive was in like around the 40-yard line of the Bears. So they went like 35, 40 yards, whatever it was, and they scored another touchdown to put themselves up 20-0. Okay, the Bears turned the ball over on downs in their own end to end the first quarter. Okay, So on the ensuing drive, Alex Webster took a 22-yard catch and run from quarterback Charlie Connolly, setting up a 3-yard touchdown run from Alex Webster, increasing the lead to 20-0. George Blanda and the Bears responded with a touchdown drive of their own, but Webster broke the Bears' collective backs on the next drive when he sidestepped a screen pass for a 50-yard gain and scored a 1-yard touchdown run, his second TD of the first half. The Giants scored another touchdown when they blocked a punt in the end zone and recovered the ball, leading to a 34-7 halftime lead. Everything went right for the Giants in this game. There were other championship games where everything went right for the other team. This just happened to be the Giants' year. Everything went their way. The Giants scored 2 more second-half touchdowns and coasted 47-7 before 56,836 people at Yankee Stadium. The 1956 title was the Giants' fourth. They played in 5 of the next 6 title games from 1958 to 1963, but did not win any of them. After the 56 title, it was another 30 years before their next title, which wound up being in Super Bowl 21. Although the home team, the Giants, wore their white jerseys and the Bears their navy blue in the 56 championship game. The Giants were the home team, but they wore all white. New York's custom at the time was to alternate between blue and white jerseys at home. The blue jerseys were designated as the home jerseys beginning in 1957, while the white tops served as inspiration for the Giants' current road uniforms they started wearing in 2005. So a little bit of history there for you. So, but it was also other things. Like in 1967, the Giants, for whatever reason, they wore white at home the whole season. Then in 1968, they started wearing blue at home. So it's like, go figure. But the 1956 season for the New York Giants was very, very special. They took a little step back in 57. Nothing horrible. The Browns, they drafted some guy by the name of Jim Brown in 1957. Made things really, really interesting for the next quite a few years for the New York Giants. But 1957, they took a little step back, but this was a golden age for the Giants. From 1956 to 1963, the Giants won 6 championship games, and 1956 was the crowning achievement. Not only did they get to the championship game, but they won it. So 1956 was a great season for the New York Giants. It was their 4th championship. Unfortunately, as I just read, it would be another 30 years before the Giants would win championship number 5. So we need to enjoy this one because it's another 30 more episodes for me before we win another championship. But anyway, 1956, great season in the history of the New York Giants. They won the championship 47-7 over the Bears for championship number 4. So that wraps up the 1956 season. I'll be back again tomorrow with the 1957 season for the New York Giants, which just happened to be the 33rd season in the history of the New York Giants. I'll see you then.